Hey guys, so today I'm going to be reviewing the Sonia Kashuk Au Naturale palette, and I'm sure that lots and lots of you already have this because it's not new. It's been out for years and years, and I've heard people talk about this so much, and I've had a lot of people ask me if I had it or what did I think about it, and a lot of people recommended that I get it. So I thought, okay, enough already, I'm gonna pick it up and check it out. My experience with Sonia Kashuk eyeshadows up until this point has been limited edition palettes only. I own two of them and I have very mixed feelings about them. I like them, but what I've noticed is with one palette that I own, there's a great inconsistency from shadow to shadow within the palette, and that was the Escape to Paradise palette. And then the other one that I have is the Moroccan Dunes palette, which was all metallic. It was three metallic shadows, and there is so much fallout with those that it's kind of hard to work with, but the colors are beautiful and they do look pretty. But anyway, that was my only experience. I had never purchased any Sonia Kashuk eyeshadows that were in the permanent line, so I thought if I was going to do that this would be a good one to get. Now, this palette used to be called the Sonia Kashuk Au Naturale instructional palette, and it used to have like a little slide out thing here that had instructions with how to do different looks, and for whatever reason they eliminated that. And it doesn't matter to me because I know how to do different looks, and I have, you know, some experience, so it's easy for me to put together a look just by looking at a palette. But I'm kind of disappointed that they got rid of that, because I think it would be nice for someone who was a beginner and could use that instruction. But then again, with YouTube nowadays, it doesn't matter what product you buy, there's probably a video up on how to do a look. So I don't know, I guess they felt like it wasn't necessary. And there's no applicators or anything that come with this, so again, if somebody was a beginner, they wouldn't have anything to put it on with. But I know nowadays that a lot of people have a nice brush collection, but I feel like you can't just assume that someone does. I don't know, maybe it's just me and the way I'm looking at it, but a lot of people, when they buy an eyeshadow palette, if it has an applicator with it, they throw it out. And don't throw those out. They can come in handy for different things. And there's been a lot of products that I have bought that worked best with a sponge tip applicator. But anyways, this doesn't have a sponge tip applicator, and the cost on this is $20, which I feel like $20 is kind of a lot for a drugstore eyeshadow palette. You do get 12 colors in it, but that seemed a little pricey to me. Now, as far as the shadows themselves, I love the selection of colors. I think this is so great that they give you a black, a cool gray, and a warm gray, and then they give you 3 different browns. They give you a red tone brown, and a yellow tone brown, and a cool tone brown. And they give you a peachy shade, a peachy brown, light peachy brown, and they give you a light warm brown. And that's what those look like. And then for highlight or lid colors, they give you a ivory, and then a sort of bisque cream, and then a goldeny cream color, or warm color. So that's what they give you for those. Now, from shadow to shadow, the very first thing I did when I purchased this is I swatched every single color. And my first impression was that I liked most of the colors in the palette, but there are a few duds in here. So I'm going to swatch each one so that you can see what I mean. I'm going to start with the upper left-hand corner here and swatch the lightest shadow. And that one does not pick up much pigment onto my skin, and it's kind of patchy. So that was the very first one I swatched, and I was like, oh no, why do people love this palette so much? I was scared at that point. Then I swatched the one in the middle, which is a very yellow banana type color, and this one is super pigmented and, you know, no problems performing there. As a matter of fact, let me see, you know, that's why I didn't even bother swatching the first one, because it wasn't going to show up on my skin, but this one doesn't either, so there's nothing to look at there. And then this is the third one, and this is kind of not as pigmented as the second one, but definitely more pigmented than the first one. But yeah, if I swatch any of those three on my skin, you won't be able to see any of them, so there's no point there. And it looks like with the ones that are pigmented, you have to be careful, because I don't know if you're going to be able to see how much that's disturbed now. That second one has kicked up a lot of product. Okay, so let's move on to the second row. So with the second row, because I know these colors will show up on my skin, I'm going to swatch all three and then show you the swatches on my skin. But I knew that wasn't going to work with that first row. Okay, so there they are on my fingers. And then there they are swatched on my skin. So all three of these, fantastic. And I like that they even gave you these, because you don't always get these kinds of colors in an eyeshadow palette. And they're so versatile and so useful. I mean, you can do these as lid colors, you can do them as transitional colors, and this darkest one you could even do as a crease color. So those, all three of those, fantastic. And then in the third row where the browns are, again, great colors, great browns. All really pigmented, really blendable, fantastic. No duds there. And then in the third row, you've got two grays, a warm gray and a cool gray, and then a black. And again, nice job with those. And there they are swatched. So fantastic pigmentation, blend really nicely, great colors. So looking at the palette as a whole, I would say that the upper left-hand corner is definitely a dud. I used that as my highlight today because knowing it was a dud, I wanted to try it out anyway. And yeah, you can make it work. You just have to kind of pack it on a little bit because it's not that pigmented and it's kind of patchy, but you can make it work. And then the kind of iffy color in the corner here, I used that on my lids. And I had a lot of trouble getting it to show up because of course it's very close to my skin tone, but it's just not the greatest shadow in the world. So having said that, there's only two duds in my opinion in this palette, but the problem with that is the two colors that they are sort of essential to doing a whole look, because if the only light shade that's a good one is this banana colored one in the middle, that could pose a problem depending on what type of look you wanted to do. So I want to give this palette a good review because I do like most of the colors in it and most of the shadows are great, but I would say that the only way that you're going to be completely satisfied with the look that you do with this palette is to use a highlight shade that you already have in your collection. And that kind of defeats the purpose of an all-in-one palette like this. Is, you know, if you can't use all the colors the way you want to use them, or if you wanted to use that shade as a highlight shade and it doesn't perform the way you want it to, then what good is it really? Well, it's a good palette for someone like me who has a large collection already and doesn't need that highlight shade. I can just use any old highlight shade that I have in my collection, but if you don't have an extensive collection, you're gonna be disappointed with this palette because you can't use that shade in the corner. And again, with this other one in the opposite corner, a lot of people like to do that off-white creamy color all over their eye, then start playing around with the other colors on top of that. That's the way a lot of people do their makeup. So if you're somebody like that, then this palette will be a disappointment for you in that regard. And again, if you just wanted to use that shade on your lid, it's not going to perform that well for that either. So just keep all these things in mind. But knowing what I know now, would I still purchase it? I would, because I love those other 9 shades that are, well, actually 10. I love 10 out of the 12 shades in the palette, so I feel like it's worth it for me for that. But if I didn't have a huge collection, if I needed those other 2 shades, I wouldn't get the palette. So depending on what you have for eyeshadows already, this is a hit or a miss, depending on, you know, what you've got. But I love the texture of these. I love the pigmentation. Not crazy about the price. I think 20 bucks is a lot for a drugstore palette, because there are some other palettes that you can get that have this many shadows in them that are almost as good. See, that's the thing, is these shadows down the bottom here are fantastic. But the thing that makes this palette the most unique is it's all matte. And how many palettes can you think of at the drugstore with this many shadows in it that are all matte? I can't think of any. So it is unique for that, and I would recommend it. I think it's great if they could just fix those 2 shades, you know, reformulate those 2 shades in the upper corner. I think they would have an amazing product on their hands, and I would not be complaining at all. But gotta tell you the bad aspects of it with the good aspects of it. The packaging seems pretty sturdy. It's nice and light. It's portable. It's thin. This is not going to take up a lot of room in your handbag if you're somebody that needs to do your makeup on the go. There's no mirror in it, so you know you're going to need an additional mirror wherever you go if you wanted to make this portable. But I think it's a good product, and I think it's worth the money. So that is my review for the Sonia Kashuk Ion Neutral palette, and I will see you next time. Bye, you guys.